Welcome back to One on One with Mr. U. Of course, I am your host, Mr. U. In studio with us, Michael Klassen of the 5 a.m. podcast, veteran broadcast producer, and just a man about town, Renaissance man, if you will. So, Mike, good to have you in the house with us, man. How are you, brother? All's well?
Doing very well. It's we're recording this on a Monday, but it's a lovely Monday. I'm excited for this conversation and for the week.
Same here, man. Mondays aren't that bad when the right things happen, man. But good to have you in the box with us today, man. We had such an awesome chat in our pre-interview, and I wanted to kind of share with the world some of the things that we were talking about. So let's see how that turns out for us. But customarily, I always ask our guests that come in, first introductory question: what's your childhood and upbringing like? Tell me about young Michael. What was that like?
Oh man, I struggled to get along with my parents a little bit. We weren't
Okay, it's honest.
we weren't that well off. I love my parents, of course, but sometimes we're designed to grind in those relationships. Grew up on a farm, which I absolutely loved. I would still love to be working on a farm or living on a farm today. Of course, just such a great experience being in the woods, man, making tree forts and snow forts and not having the same experiences growing up that my cousins and friends that lived in the city had. And I was so fortunate to grow up on a farm, even though it didn't seem by the world standards that we had a lot. We were well fed. And looking back now, we had the kind of diet that people talk about having now. I was thinking, no wonder I was so skinny back then, drinking all that bone broth and eating all that beef and
Sounds so good, brother.
and of course throwing bales around when you're I don't know, 7 to 10 years old. And I have this distinct memory of walking into our 5th grade class one morning, and it was probably September because my friend Jason and I were talking about throwing bales around and getting them up into the hayloft. And, it's just those kinds of conversations that we were talking about tractors and what our farms were going to look like when we grew up. Yeah.
Wow. I love that. Because of what you're doing, I want to ask this question that we'll kind of get into more about what you're doing. Yes. But to grow up on a farm, I'm a city boy in my heart. I'm living in a place that's considered rural, but kind of growing into a metropolitan through gentrification and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I'm a city boy to my heart. That's all I really understand. But in your respect, I would imagine that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine that you have a strong work ethic because of the way that you grew up on the farm. Talk to me about that, because I think it's going to be a good segue into what you're actually doing with 5 a.m. So kind of help me understand that real quick about the work ethic, the mindset that you were taught, and what you pulled out of it as a young child.
Oh, yeah. I think my parents would joke that I was even seating in the womb, driving the tractor with my mom while I was like in utero. And so there's a strong work ethic. And I used to joke that I could have no arms and no legs, and my parents or grandparents would find something for me to do with my teeth, like hop around with a pail.
Wow.
And a great memory I have of my maternal grandfather, who I felt pretty close to. He and I seemed to have a good relationship, and we were shoveling grain, and we had to get this silage and grain ready, but we wanted to go to the fair. The county fair was on. And it was August and it was hot, and we were struggling to get this stuff done. And my grandfather, who was probably, I'd say 75 at the time, give or take.
Wow.
He comes out, he grabs a grain shovel and outworks his 3 grandsons that are there.
It's not a good look.
It's like, you guys are complaining about not going? Okay, well, let's get some stuff done. And
wow.
It was work first, play later at our house. Yeah.
Work first and play later. Well, that's a good mentality. I'm gonna get into those disciplines in a little bit. But I want to get you to kind of share about your veteran broadcast career. You had extensive experience in news and sports and film, even some podcast projects. Tell me a little bit about that time that you were doing that, kind of your takeaway from it, what you learned, how you grew from it. Share that a little bit if you can.
Yes. Well, one of my greatest my most enjoyable assignments, I should say, is when I was able to broadcast sports, and it was usually uh, tournaments of different kinds. So it could be high school, but mainly college or university sports. And um, I loved. I didn't have the experience of like a big university campus and the sports and all of that. I have my
I see.
degree and everything. It was a smaller college that I went to, but being able to be around these university level coaches and players, some of the coaches rather had maybe been in the big leagues and were now at the university level coaching, or kind of, maybe they were, some of them might have been in the phase of giving back, or some of them went back, uh, but being around people who were high achievers, that uh, even the players that had this upbringing of sport and this team mindset and this camaraderie, but yet that desire for excellence. And a lot of the good players were there on scholarships, and they knew that they were there because they were actually good at their craft and they had
Okay.
dedicated themselves. And I loved being around these people who had excelled in sport, were now at the university level, and they had other responsibilities. I was working and doing what I love to do, telling people stories. But just being able to get into the mind of successful coaches and successful players, man, that was, I mean, shut up and take my money kind of situation.
No, I love that. In our pre-interview chat, you mentioned something I thought was so cool and so strange at the same time. You mentioned about your love for television. Now, when I was growing up, excuse me, I can say that I had a love for television.
Uh-huh.
I spent a good bit of time in it. Uh, no offense to my mom, it wasn't her fault. It was just kind of how I spent my time. I
Uh-huh.
couldn't go outside and do anything. I'm in front of the television watching Wild Kingdom, Nature, watching some kind of sporting event,
Yeah.
something that in most cases were edifying for me. We mentioned the love for television. These days, people are trying to get away from television because of all that's coming through the
Oh,
screen. They
yeah.
don't want to have that filter into their kids' mind or into their own. But
Mhm.
you mentioned a love for television. Explain that for the viewers and listeners who may not understand what that means.
Okay, well, where I grew up, we had like maybe two TV stations. So
Oh, okay,
we didn't
okay,
have
okay.
cable. So the I think the one reason that I could truly say that I loved television back then was because that was the break from all the farm work. And that was the break from being outside when it was hot or cold, or uh we were just very outdoors. And so that relaxing time was maybe with my parents or my siblings. And so there's a lot of good memories of those images, television coming through that screen. And yeah, so there's a lot of good memories associated with that.
I love that. One more question about the sports aspect, because I
Mhm.
definitely share the love for sports that you have. Do you believe, Michael, that it's possible to be in that world and not bring that competitive nature into everything else?
Oh,
But if it feels like it's almost something that you catch. Once you start doing it, if you're in any kind of athletics, when you start catching it, it starts translating into business. I interview people who are CEOs of companies, and I always hear, especially their former athletes of any kind, I hear that competition, I hear that
mhm.
competitive, that push, that grind, that hustle. Is there any way is it possible to separate that in your mind, or is it something that is kind of par for the course? What do you think about that?
Oh man, I hope that it sticks with the individual. And
Okay.
I was good at sport. We played a lot. Only having two TV channels and my mom being like, if you guys
I
are
had
bored,
12, so
there you
it
go.
was not great, but I had
You
12.
so that competitiveness, as long as we understand that we don't want it to be prideful because of the things that come along with pride, and how that can
Yeah,
damage relationships and damage ourselves too. But
absolutely.
those skills and values of teamwork, of responsibility, and of success, and those endorphins that we get, those values of being involved in sport are things that I would hope everyone would use as a foundation for life. I think for me, the big one was not letting your team down and realizing that that you had to be punctual, you had to give it your all, because you had another team of guys, in my case, who relied on you to pull your weight.
That makes a lot of sense. I honestly, I grew up around athletics and sports and stuff. And to me, I get the whole teamwork, camaraderie thing. What does a person do when when they didn't grow up around sports or had a family that didn't care for sports? How do they develop the whole teamwork, competitive? I wonder how they do it. I don't know if you can speak to that or not, but I'm
Wow.
just a curious question. I'm just wondering, how do they grow and function in that capacity when they just haven't had the access to that early in life? But just something
That's
I'm thinking about there. Go ahead.
that is actually a really good thing to think about. And I think to maybe some younger people that I know who haven't had that experience of the sport life and the team life, and
Yeah.
coaches and teammates holding you responsible. When you don't have that, um, who is going to put you into those pressure cooker situations where you have to see what you're made of?
Oh,
And
absolutely.
if you're standing at home plate and you realize like the count is not going towards your team, man, and you're up to bat and you've got two guys on first and third and you really need a win, kind of like some people really need a paycheck when it comes to the 15th, like you guys really need a win. And it comes down to I got to show these people what I got. So if for people that don't have that experience, they need to get those um the training of the adversity and the expectation of others in those positive ways. I don't know, short of those, man, being around people is so valuable, even the ones that are hard on you or that you don't like. There's just so much value in relationships.
Oh, absolutely, man. I totally agree with that, man. I think that's probably the right answer to the question I was asking. Definitely. 5 a.m. podcast, man. Highly successful podcast, man. Talk to me about 5 a.m. podcast, the reason you decided to start doing it, what you've been learning,
Yes.
interesting things about it. Your guests. Talk to us, man.
Yes. Well, I love it. And I love the name. Or it doesn't, you can listen and not get up at 5 a.m. Let's just get that, put that on
You
the
better
table
clarify.
right
You better
there.
clarify that part. That's really
Yes.
important.
Yes.
Clarify that.
There's no expectation for you to get up at 5 or 5:01 or even 6. I mean, you got to do what you got to do. I understand. What we want to be is purveyors of hope. And Napoleon Bonaparte said that leaders are dealers in hope. And when I was a young boy, sometimes you feel like things are stacked against you just on perception. And
Sure.
so in my Sunday school class, I heard about this guy with a really bizarre sounding name called Barnabas. I knew what a barn was. I didn't know what a Barnabas was, but I found out that this guy was an encourager of people.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what people called him, son of encouragement. And I was like, man, I could do that. I could do that. I could encourage people. And so that's kind of stuck with me of being a team player, elevating the team and being that positive light. I mean, sometimes there's a lot of darkness and a lot of negativity. And one thing I knew that I needed was encouragement. And so then I could bring that encouragement and that positive mental attitude that I learned about from Zig Ziglar to other people. And 5 a.m. podcast came out of that. And my wife and I started it just with articles. We couldn't afford all the gear we needed to do the podcast part. And we built that up over time. And there's a fullness of time for everything, right? Like there's seed, there's time, and there's harvest. And so that's what we wanted 5 a.m. podcast to be, was a place where people could go and they could get a break from the pressure and just have some encouraging articles that would give them kind of information that they needed to do that next leg of the race or that next part of their journey. That we might have been a rest stop where people could come and read some information. I never thought of that. Well, that's a different perspective. Yeah. And then carry on.
That.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that. One of the things that I got in just kind of researching what you're doing at 5 a.m. podcast, you're dealing a lot with strategic living and also a more intentional routine, a disciplined lifestyle. Those are the kind of things that are buzzwords for me because I try to live like that. There are limits, of course, and there's always exceptions to every rule.
Yep.
But I try to live with that. And to me, so get up at 5 a.m. and listen to your show, that's not hard for me. But I'm up 5 a.m. probably praying. I'm not going to be up at 5 a.m. listening to a show.
Yes.
Maybe 6:30, maybe 7, but not 5.
Right.
But the idea of a daily discipline, those kind of developing those stronger habits. It sounds like your show is kind of dealing with that. What kind of experiences have you had with that in sending that message out?
Wow. Of just, you know, when one of our there's two great articles that we wrote early on, and I call them great because they constantly get visitors. And
Okay.
one is digging in the dirt about gardening and the benefits of being outside in the sun, and the other one is the smart goal worksheet that we've given away for years, just as a one sheet, going through the smart principles of goal setting. And hopefully this answers your question, because these two articles are kind of like the quintessential uh, clarion call, let's say, for 5 a.m. podcast of know who you are, know your surroundings, be comfortable where you are, but know that there's tools that can get you to where you want to be. And it is true that we really don't know what we don't know. And I love to read books for that very reason of I know if I keep doing the same thing I'm doing, I'm going to get the same results. But if I want different results, I got to change some things up. And
No, I love
that
it.
that works with diet, that works with sleep patterns, that works with getting a job, getting paid, making some money. And that making some money thing is so pervasive in our day and age of having a good group of people around. And part of the 5am podcast.com site, it kind of struck me many years ago, because my parents were always very strict on who our friends were. And if there was someone that
Mm,
started coming around that they did not like, it's like, well, that's the last time he's coming over or she's
right.
coming over. And so I realized once, I was quite young, I was sitting at a crosswalk, and I noticed this group of people came by, and this other single person by themselves was walking this way through that crowd of friends. And I thought, boy, you know what? You always travel in the same direction of your friends. And if you don't like the direction they're traveling, you got to find some new friends, or you're walking by yourself.
No, absolutely.
So that's I think that's 5 a.m. podcast in a nutshell.
I think it's a fantastic show. What
Thank
I'm
you.
hearing.
Thank you.
You're a published author. Got some book titles on the way. I know you deal a lot with spiritual understanding and trying to build healthy habits and stuff.
Yes.
Talk to me about, what would you say if someone were listening right now and they were thinking about, kind of I guess, practical insights for everyday life. What's one that comes to mind that you would offer them if they were asking you now?
Oh man. Well, the idea behind calling our podcast 5 a.m. podcast was that the necessary foundation of the day is our morning, and actually the night before,
I love
of
that.
having a great foundation for our day. And I used to be that kind of person that would hit the snooze button like 3 times, and then all of a sudden I do the math in my head because it's going off for the third or fourth time, and I'm thinking, it goes 9 minutes. 9 times 3 is 27. Oh man, I'm like, now it's like a mad dash sprint to get out the door and get to the money man at the office or the job site. And I needed a better way to live. I had to have better structure. And I met this, well, I would say he was older than me. I had to come from working outside the office for a little while because I had hurt myself, and I was working in the office. And this guy was talking about how he would get up early. He'd set his kind of intentions, what he was going to do for the day. And he was like not rushed, talking about his mornings.
Mm.
And I was still quite young at the time, probably early 20s. And I was like, oh man, I need this. Like, I
Wow.
loathe having to get up to milk cows at 5 or 5:30 in the morning, especially in a cold January winter. Um,
Ooh.
so in just watching people around me, I was realizing this isn't working for me. I'm too stressed. I'm too unpleasant in the morning. I wasn't even into drinking coffee at the time. I was into rushing because I wasn't ordering my day right, and I wasn't ordering my night right. And I wasn't having this relaxed, intentional morning that I heard from this older guy. And he had a very stressful job in the office, and he'd been there for a long time, and a nice fellow. And I definitely took that away from my time working with that company of I had to change my mindset and what I thought of mornings. And then that meant I had to actually discipline myself at nighttime so
That's
that
a
I
big
would go,
word right there.
yeah, discipline. And I had to say, I can't do this now because I have to do this later and I need my sleep.
I'm really hoping a lot of our viewers listen to, and tune out right there, because
Yes.
social media is littered with complaints about the morning. If you watch your social media feed between 6 and 9 a.m.
Mm.
Monday through Friday, you're going to see nothing but complaints.
Mm.
Complaints about everything. I don't have my coffee. I didn't have time to get my coffee. I spilled
Yes.
my coffee. I had to hit the snooze button, like you said, 3 times. I'm late for work. This commute is awful. They send in social media posts while they're on their commute. So it's like, this is just, it's just constant complaining. It's like, so with that being in mind, one thing you said during our pre-interview chat, I want to kind of bring it back through. You said people get up early to go to work. I want to ask you, Michael, how would you encourage listeners today to do that for themselves as opposed for just an employer? Because it feels like, generally speaking, 9 out of 10 people that you ask are doing that. They're doing it for an employer, not for themselves. If it's up to them, they stay in and they sleep later. But you're advocating something different. Speak to that real quick.
Oh, yes. So when we think of why we do things and why we live our life, who's it for? And
Wow.
it might be for, maybe we think right now that it's for the landlord, or it's for the mortgage company, or it's for the boss man, or somebody else like that. But when we have this idea that we're actually living for ourselves, and these are just the people that are coming to help us get something, I'd much rather
That's great.
not know where I'd much rather know where I'm sleeping than not know where I'm sleeping. I'd much rather have a roof over my head. So as much as I may not like the landlord or the banker that has the note on the home loan, I understand that those people are actually tools in my tool belt. And so just kind of, some people say flip the script. Okay, I get it. Think outside the box, all those things. But when we look at the people that ebb and flow out of our life, they have something to give us and we have something to give them. But we don't want the landlord and the boss man or boss woman or the miserable person at the office to be the ones that move us as we go through life. We have to say, okay, so these people are either they're designed to grind, maybe to design get the rough edges off of me, or they're here to help me. So that then I realize, okay, so I'm going to reorder my night so that my morning is better, and so that my day is better. And I build this foundation for my day so that I'm not moved by the unpleasant individuals, the jerks at work, or the, I know the landlord's coming for the rent money every single month. And I realize everybody's got to get paid. So if I'm going to deal with these unpleasant people, I want to make my life pleasant. And so if I can be principled and disciplined and make my life pleasant and present, then when these people come asking for what they want, saying, time to pay up, sucker. And then we can say, okay, I knew you were coming. And I'm prepared for you. And you're not going to rock my boat. I'm on a different trajectory where I'm not being pushed around by people, but I understand that they're coming to push, and I'm going to be ready for them. And I'll do a little, I don't know, that Heisman Trophy move, I'll block and pivot, get around.
Copy that, man. Copy that. I love that. Got a few more questions. I'm gonna try to get them in. It's a handful more. I don't want to let you walk out of here and I try to ask at least the majority of these questions. But real quick, if somebody said, you know what, I'm just not a morning person, Michael. I just never been like that. What's your real talk response to them? Because those people who have those kind of responses, they often need a push, a shove out, a bit greater than the norm in order to get, their butts and get it. They might need a coach. They might need, somebody to, kind of just give them that push. What's your response to somebody who said, I'm not a morning person, that I can't develop those kind of habits and disciplines? What would you say to them?
Yes.
Real quick.
Well, I would say, first off, from my perspective, as living the Christian life, reading the Bible, I find out that I'm supposed to refer to men as my fathers or brothers, and women as my sisters or mothers. So coming from this mindset of not making your life more miserable with condemnation, but coming along and saying, please learn from my mistakes. Of I needed to understand that if I had discipline in my evening, then that would make my mornings less painful. And I could set my intentions for the day even the night before. And so what I would say to you, if you're having trouble, everything in life is a learned behavior or response, right?
Mm.
Everything is. And how bad do you want something good in your life? How satisfied are you with the miserable? And
Wow.
how much do you actually want to either change your thinking or to say, you know what, I've done it this way for the last 5 years since college or since high school, and it is just not working for me. And you're right, it's not working for you. But there's so many people that have had exactly the same problems and mindsets where you are at right now. And some of us, well, we pay attention and we say, okay, I'm no longer satisfied with the misery. I need something better. And
I
so it
love it.
was just a learned behavior. And if you think of so like from the Hebrews, the Israelites in the Bible, and so the Jewish people today, their day starts with rest in the evening. If we consider it that way, your day doesn't start at the crack of dawn or when your alarm goes off. Your day's already started when you've gone off to bed. And I like that perspective because that rest is so important. And when we think, oh, our day's actually starting with rest, it's not starting with trauma and stress and that need for caffeine. And so we can do it. Like Home Depot used to say, you can do it, we can help. Absolutely. Mister, you can help.
Yeah,
Michael Klassen can help.
I sure try.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
try. I love this, man. I love the attitude of gratitude that you definitely seem to have.
Yeah.
I want to ask you this two-part question, really.
Okay.
But first question is this: share one success story that you believe you got, or a listener has gotten by listening to the 5 a.m. podcast. Share a success story or a testimonial about that, and then after that, love you'd answer for me at the height. What do you want 5 a.m. podcast to accomplish? What do you want to see as a lofty goal? You can answer
Well,
both of those now. Go ahead.
yeah, some of these things are really, there's humility and there's humiliation, there's pride and all the stuff that comes from that. Uh we had a guest early on, Jessica Morris, and she talked about her struggle with addiction and what her
Wow.
childhood, that the abuse that was in there. And I understand hurt people, but eventually people get out of that cycle. And so Jessica shared her story, which was could be a little intense for some people to hear what she was
Absolutely.
going through. But
Absolutely.
we had a YouTube comment where the comment was very brief. It was, I needed to hear this today.
Mm.
And that got me in the feels department
Oh
of
yeah.
knowing that some stranger, who knows where they were, who knows what they were going through. One of the things that was talked about in there was unaliving ourselves, as is said today. We used to call it suicide, but you never know where people are at. And if you can just, man, we think about giving breadcrumbs to ducks at the park or something like
Mm.
that. And sometimes you might feel like, man, what am I even accomplishing? We just never know those people that are across the miles that are going to say, man, you have no idea, but I really needed to hear this today. And so for the future of 5 a.m. podcast, we absolutely want to build that community of people who I've been there, I've learned, or I need help to learn how to think outside the box or to do things differently so I don't keep getting the same results. That's really what we want 5ampodcast.com to be, is a place where people can go and say, you know what, this is the information I was looking for. This is the information I needed. And this is the community of people who can believe that I can achieve what maybe no one in my family line has had. And fortunately, I had parents that always pushed us to do our best. And sometimes we fell on our face. And our parents were okay with that because they knew that if we fell down, we could pick ourselves up. And that's the same for our listeners. If you're falling down and stubbing your toe because you're walking around in the dark, well, there's light that you can turn on, and there's skills to pick yourself up and say, man, I'm not making that mistake for the 5th time. But
I love that, man. Well, that's really good stuff, man. I really love that,
Thank
man.
you. Thank
you. www.5ampodcast.com. Yes. Michael is helping out a lot of folks build some strategy plans for daily living, practicality, and just kind of making some power moves in your life on a daily basis, especially starting with the mornings. I love hearing more about that.
Yes.
We got some friends that are jumping in and reposting this on their social media. Thank you guys for doing that. Thank you, JC. Appreciate that. All right. So last question I ask all of our listeners, or I ask all of our guests. Our listeners can jump in the comment section if they want to, but this is mainly for you. And it always gives you a little bit of a pause, but it's good though. Last question for today's show. If you take away your author work, your podcasting work, everything that you've done up to this point, what is Michael most likely doing career-wise, mission-wise, vocation-wise, if he wasn't doing those things he's doing now?
Oh boy, that's a good question. That is a really good question.
Don't say farmhand either. Farmhand is not the acceptable answer.
No, I think I probably would have hopefully have been an aviator in the Marine Corps.
Really?
Yeah.
Why didn't you do that?
Well, I was about to head off to the recruiting station in my college years, and I just started getting some dreams and some nudges that I was like, I feel like God is like pushing me in a different direction. Ooh. And I felt like I had to really make this sacrifice of, was I going to do what I wanted, or was I going to go down the unknown road and follow what I felt like I was getting in visions of the night? I think it's in Job 14. It talks about how these visions of the night will come and they will change the course of your life to save you from the sword and the pit and the destroyer. And I didn't know about that verse until much later in my life, but yeah, that's probably what I could see myself doing if I wasn't doing all of this other stuff.
I love that answer, man. And I'll tell you about those dreams of the night. You are not going to be hitting the snooze button when these dreams is happening.
Yes,
you might wake up way early. You'll be up before the alarm clock goes off.
Yes.
Ask me how I know. But Michael, thank you so much for jumping in here, man. This was a fantastic interview. 5ampodcast.com. Michael's helping folks out with strategic plans for daily living, and sound like some success stories are happening. So thank you for doing what you do on your side. Thanks for being here as well. Any closing thoughts for our listeners and viewers, man? The floor is yours, brother.
Okay. Well, one thing that I love to tell people, because this has helped me so much in my life, is the book of Proverbs has a chapter for every day of the month. And so like today is the 7th of July. So it's like Proverbs 7 today. And for me, when I've been having trouble in my life, I've been reading that, and you read it over and over, and every day there's something new in there, even though you read it 10, 15 times.
Absolutely.
And you just think, oh, that's my problem. I am the common denominator in all of my problems. And there you go. The book of Proverbs.
No, I love it, man. Thanks again for jumping in here. For you guys watching and listening, please check out Michael. He'll drop his information on our YouTube channel under the episode today. After the show is done, you'll find him on social media and at 5ampodcast.com. Mike, thanks for jumping in here, brother. Really appreciate it, man. Michael and Mr. U are out of here. Have a fantastic day. Thanks for listening.